In the early 1900s, America stood on the edge of something big. Cities were filling with people, and the streets were jammed with horses, carriages, and bicycles. Life moved slowly, but people dreamed of speed. They wanted freedom to travel far beyond the limits of rails and wagons. Then cars entered the story. At first they were rare, just a few wealthy people driving around in them, being stared at like kings. People gathered on dusty streets just to see the noisy machines rattle past. But behind the noise was a promise, a new way of life. Young men looked at cars and saw adventure. Families saw hope for travel. Businessmen saw a tool for power. Henry Ford stepped forward with an idea, a car not just for the rich, but for every American. His Model T would change the country forever. In Detroit, factories roared with energy, building cars faster than ever before. Workers stood in long lines, each man adding his piece until the machine rolled off the line ready for the road. The sound of industry filled the air like thunder. But not everyone was ready for change. Powerful voices fought against the car. Rail companies wanted to keep control of travel. Some leaders warned that cars were dangerous, loud, and reckless. Streets were not built for machines. Accidents shocked the nation, and critics shouted that this was chaos on wheels. Still, people could not turn back. They tasted speed, and they wanted more. From the crowded streets of New York to the open fields of the Midwest, America felt a shift. Cars were no longer a dream. They were a challenge to the old world, and the battle would come. The love story was beginning, but it would not be gentle. It would be fast, dangerous, and unstoppable. By the 1920s, America's roads began to change. Dirt tracks turned into paved highways. The sound of horse hooves slowly faded, replaced by the steady roar of engines. Cities like Detroit, Chicago, and Los Angeles buzzed with car factories. They were no longer just for the wealthy. Henry Ford's assembly line turned them into machines that ordinary workers could buy. But the rise of the car was not smooth. Traffic accidents increased. Police in New York and Boston had to control speeding vehicles for the first time. Old-fashioned wagon drivers cursed the new machines that pushed them off the roads. In small towns, kids cheered when they saw shiny cars rushing by, while elders worried the machines were too dangerous. Gas stations popped up on every corner. Mechanics opened shops to repair engines. Billboards along the highways sold tires, fuel, and road maps. America's identity was changing fast. People wanted to go farther, faster, and with more freedom. But as cities grew louder, dirtier, and more dangerous, tension built. Smoke filled the air. Traffic jams clogged downtown streets. Newspapers ran stories of deadly crashes that shocked the nation. But the love for speed, power, and freedom was too strong to stop. America was addicted. The car was not just a machine anymore. It was a symbol of freedom, success, and ambition. Families saved money to buy one. Teenagers dreamed of driving their first car. And as highways stretched across the land, the nation braced itself for a future where the roads would decide everything. Would America's love affair with cars create unity or chaos? The answer was still ahead, waiting in the miles to come. When World War II broke out, America's car industry faced a new test. The factories that once built shiny sedans turned out tanks, jeeps, and planes. Detroit was called the arsenal of democracy, and car workers became soldiers of steel. Building machines that would help win the war, they also built a legacy that would last long after the war was over. Streets that once echoed with the hum of engines fell silent. Gasoline was rationed, tires were scarce, and families learned to make do with less. Cars were no longer a symbol of freedom. They became a memory, a dream deferred. But war also sparks innovation. Engineers experimented with stronger engines, better materials, and designs that could handle the pressure. Soldiers driving jeeps across Europe learned the value of reliability. And when they came back home, they wanted cars that carried the same strength and spirit. The nation was hungry for speed, for style, and most of all, for freedom again. As peace returned, so did the dream of the open road. Highways began stretching farther, connecting towns and cities like veins across the country. Families packed into big cars for Sunday drives. Teenagers cruised Main Street, and motels popped up to serve the growing wave of travelers. The war had taken much, but it gave back something powerful: The idea that cars were not just machines, they were the heartbeat of America, a way to move forward after dark times. The industry was ready for a new era, and so were the people. Something bigger was coming, something that would change not just how Americans drove, but how they lived. You ever wonder why we stopped making muscle cars? By the 1960s, America was ready for speed. The open roads and growing suburbs gave birth to a new kind of car, the muscle car. Ford, Chevrolet, and Dodge started building machines that were meant for power, not just for family trips. And when Ford released the Mustang in 1964, young drivers across the country wanted one. Suddenly, it wasn't just about getting from point A to point B, it was about owning the road. And with the Camaro and the Charger, America's muscle car wars began. Teenagers in places like California and Texas saved every dollar to buy cars that could go from 0 to 60 in under 6 seconds. Owning a muscle car meant freedom, rebellion, and most of all, strength. But this war had consequences. Insurance rates climbed, gas prices rose, accidents increased. And soon the government started stepping in with safety and environmental rules. Still, for a time, the muscle car was America's ultimate symbol of power. These cars weren't just machines. They were part of the culture. Songs, movies, and posters celebrated them. When a Mustang or a Charger pulled up to a stoplight, people turned their heads. Drivers didn't just want to win races, they wanted to be remembered. And on an ordinary street, any driver could feel like a race car driver. That's why we stopped making muscle cars. The story of cars in America is not finished. It keeps moving forward like a highway with no end. After decades of roaring engines and chrome designs, America entered a new race, the race toward the future. The 1980s and 1990s brought in computers, electronics, and smarter engines. Cars became faster, lighter, and safer. Airbags, seat belts, and advanced brakes turned driving into something millions could trust every day. Detroit still built classics, but new rivals from Japan and Europe forced America to improve. Competition was fierce, but it made U.S. cars stronger. The 2000s opened another chapter. Hybrid cars like the Toyota Prius shook the industry, and American companies responded with electric dreams. Tesla rose out of California like a storm, proving that electric cars could be powerful, stylish, and fast. General Motors and Ford followed, building electric trucks and SUVs that captured attention. The highways began to fill with silent vehicles running on batteries, and charging stations spread across the nation. But it was not just about technology. Cars remained a symbol of freedom in the USA. Teenager getting their first license in Texas felt the same thrill as one in New York. Families still packed into SUVs for cross-country trips. Pickups still ruled small towns and farms. Cars continued to tell stories of ambition, dreams, and survival. Today, America faces a new challenge, balancing tradition with innovation. Muscle cars and electric vehicles share the same roads. The spirit of freedom that started with Henry Ford's Model T is alive, but the road is changing. In America, the love story with cars never ends. It only takes new turns.